This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under-18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 503 for January 31st, 2017. Coming up on today's show, when someone you love is abused. That's coming up on today's show. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Minx, with my co-host,
Lusty Guy. Happy and excited and lucky to be here once again.
And we are just a few days from taking off for the Poly Living Conference.
That's right. Wonderful, sunny, warm, balmy Philadelphia. Here we come.
I have actually no idea what the weather is going to be, but it doesn't matter. We'll be inside the hotel most of the time, right?
Yeah, and I have a suspicion it will not be sunny or warm or balmy.
Well, and the people are wonderful. The people are sunny and warm and balmy.
That's right. We always have a great time at these shows, and we're really happy to be going again.
Yeah, I am. And the theme this year is inclusion, and I'll be giving a keynote on diversity, which as a skinny white chick makes me really nervous. But I've been working really hard on it, and I hope it is okay. And the thing is, if it's not, people will certainly tell me.
Yes, that's absolutely true. But yeah. I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah, and I'm excited about that. And if you've been listening please, and are going to Poly Living, please come up and say hello. Don't be shy. We love meeting you folks. And in other Poly Weekly news, we've actually been working on the Poly Weekly business lately.
Just a little bit.
I know. So the first bit of news is that Lusty Guy here is going to be blogging at our site at polyweekly.com.
Just what you needed, more Lusty Guy in your inbox.
Well, Lusty Guy, I'm biased, but I think that Lusty Guy is a great thinker and has lots of good things, not just to say, but that can be written down and shared in a blog post. And the thing about blogging is it's much more easily and readily shared than the podcast episodes. So they endure a little bit more. And he's actually already written 5 blog posts that we're going to schedule to come out over the next couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. So if you like the blog post, then comment and let us know. And if you don't, then
comment and let us know.
Comment and let us know.
And if you have any ideas for topics you want me to explore or any thoughts or feedback, don't hesitate to send in an email.
lustyguy@polyweekly.com. Also, next week, our goal is to have this out and published by Poly Living. We're pretty close to the deadline, and I had an issue with the formatter, but our new ebook, which is entitled No Dick Pics, Your Guide to Creating an Irresistible Online Dating Profile, which is the expanded book version of our Painless Poly Dating 101 class.
Or part of it.
Will be out this weekend, fingers crossed.
It ought to be, and you guys ought to enjoy it.
Yep, the goal was to debut it at Poly Living. And again, we had some last minute changes in terms of vendors. And it may take an extra day to get it up on Amazon, but we're hoping it will be out. And when it is, I will let you folks know. And you can rush to purchase. And this week in Poly News, there is a play that got a stellar review and a critic's pick from the New York Times, and it has a poly theme. Now, Miles Mallison, who was an open marriage advocate and a practitioner of open marriage with his wife, wrote Yours Unfaithfully in 1933, but it was never produced. But now it's finally on stage, at least in New York. Now, Alan of the Poly in the News blog writes, from the modern poly movement's perspective, it's fairly conventional and dated and uninformed, but hey, it was 1933. There were some bits from the coverage that caught my eye. This was from the Time Out New York review. which says, Mallison was an avid proselytizer, graciously sharing his spouse with Bertrand Russell, who happened to have a wife of his own.
Man, those poly people are everywhere.
I know. Everyone you thought you knew is actually poly. The review continues. The script offers a scrupulous examination of two warring impulses, the urge to explore versus the instinct to nurture and protect, which, as you and I know, do not have to be at odds. The article also features reviews from the New York Times and the Times Square Chronicles, as well as links to those entire reviews. Kind of interesting.
Very cool. Now, of course, we haven't actually seen the show, and I can't comment on it in any nature. But I would like to say one of the cool things about that is that we always tend to think that we're the first. Whatever generation is doing something tends to think we're the first generation to do it. And I love that, in fact, well, no, in 1933, somebody was writing plays about the idea of non-monogamy and how to put it into practice. We're really not as new as we think we are.
The old adage is that every generation thinks that it invented sex.
Yep.
But we really did, of course.
Well, good sex.
And our topic this week is an unpleasant one, and one that we have dealt with to an extent before, but something I think is very important to talk about. So we had a listener write in and say that she is in the hinge of a poly relationship. She's been with her partner B, who is male, for a year, and he has been with A, who is a woman, for 3 years. So she's entering an existing relationship of 3 years. And she writes that over the course of the last year, I have become aware of significant verbal and emotional and some physical abuse perpetuated by by A, the female partner, on B, the male partner, who is also hers. He has agreed with me that she is abusive toward him, but always makes excuses. He says all the red flag phrases of the abused. It's my fault. I shouldn't have made her mad. She loves me. She apologized. She can be so wonderful, and she's not a bad person. Last year, after receiving enough verbal and emotional abuse from her myself, I cut her out of my life. He understood and supported that I needed to do that to be healthy. But I'm really struggling with what to do. I love him so very deeply, and I hate to see him go through the pain of the verbal and emotional abuse. He won't go to therapy for himself, but we've talked about the relationships in his past, his parents, that taught him that this type of abuse is acceptable. My biggest hurdle at the moment is when he's with her, I'm scared for him. Is he being hurt? Is he being called names and degraded? Is he safe emotionally and physically? It's really difficult for me. Do you have any thoughts on how much we can do for the one we love when they won't respect and care enough for themselves to be safe? I'm at a loss. I love him so very much. I know I can't control his relationships. I can only control me, but I'm not sure what that looks like for me right now. Any thoughts on this? This is a really tough one.
Boy, it is.
And these always make me feel uncomfortable because I feel like, what if I say the wrong thing and give the wrong bit of advice and it's really bad? Now, one thing that is a little unclear to me is it looks like our listener is still in a relationship with B, the male.
Yes,
it sounds like it. Yeah. She didn't indicate that she had broken up with him, and she says she's worried about him and still loves him. So that indicates to me that they are still in a relationship together.
Well, I think the nature of her question is how to stick around while this is happening.
Right, and that I know that what the advocates say is basically. It's very important for you to make it clear that you are there for him, whether you remain in a romantic relationship with him or not, that it's very important that you let him know that you are there as a friend and someone who loves him, because it's very common for the abusers to try to isolate their victims from the friends. So he needs somebody that he knows can be a lifeline. And if you're willing to do that for him, then, you can be the safe space so that when he is ready to leave, or when he's ready to vent, or when he's ready to do whatever action needs to be taken, that you can be supportive for him in that. Now, whether you stay in the relationship with him and how you stay in a relationship with somebody who's abused, I don't really know a good way to do that. Do you?
Well, I mean, I'm going to take a step back actually and say the first thing that you need to do is figure out what's most important to you. Is it more important for you to try to have a romantic relationship with this person? Is it most important for you to try to be there as the support network for this person? Is it most important for you to try to keep yourself healthy and functional? You've got to kind of figure out your priorities. I do a lot of video production work, and I have clients who always want to have me come in and film some live event. And I tell them they need to decide what's more important, their audience at that live event or their audience who's going to watch the video. Because if I make the perfect video, then I'm going to slap a camera right down in front of the action and get in the way of all the live audience. I'm going to ask the performers or whatever it is, if it's a speech, to go back and redo things that are ugly. I'm going to want to get a big mic on them and maybe a boom mic. I'm going to do all of these lights, all of these things that will reduce the experience of the live audience. And so the question is, what's more important? And I think that question applies here to you right now. You need to decide what your priorities are. If your priorities are to be there and be supportive for your partner, and to, for lack of a better term, seed the ground for your partner's ability to start taking care of themselves, then everything Mink said is exactly spot on. You need to make sure that they know that you're there for them. You need to make sure that your relationship is not contingent upon anything they do with anybody else. You need to make sure that they know that you accept them whatever. You need to work with them to build an escape plan, so that to the extent that they're capable and ready, when things are not going crazy, they know what to do when things do go crazy. But having said all that, it's also true that one of the hardest things to do, and in fact sometimes an impossible thing to do, is, to quote a line from the Deadwood series, which I love so much, watch someone go to hell in their own way. In the final analysis, it may be true that all you can do if you want to be there for your friend is watch and witness while they go to hell. That's what adults have to do sometimes. And the price of doing that may be something you can't afford to pay. It may be that when you put yourself first, you cannot continue to be the person that is created by watching them go to hell in this way. You are the only one that can figure that out, but you kind of need to figure it out. What's your priority? If your priority is to be there and be supportive for this person, then absolutely let them know you're there, be there with them, and figure out ways to insulate yourself from their hurt. If you can't do that, then you need to let them realistically know, I can't be here. It hurts too much. I worry too much about you. The things that you're doing make me a person that I can't be. And remove yourself from the situation. It is very hard, and I'm not telling you that's the outcome you must choose, but I am saying you need to figure out what's more important to you.
And for the record, I will say what you're not saying, which is it is very difficult to be in a relationship with somebody who is enduring ongoing abuse. It is going to be very difficult for you to have a healthy and happy relationship with that person.
Oh, yeah. And you need to always, much applause, by the way, for removing yourself from the abusive situation. Be very careful that you don't let yourself get drugged back into it.
That's my fear. I mean, you have removed yourself now, as you say, but by continuing in a relationship with B, you are going to be subject to this abuse secondhand. And there actually can be quite an amount of manipulation, if A is so inclined, that will drag you back in. And there can even be sort of secondhand abuse that is directed at you through B from A, not including in any type of abuse that she is actually putting him under at this time.
And I will also throw in this little note. If there is a part of you that feels guilty for putting yourself first, and again, I'm not telling you have to put yourself first. If you want to, and you decide that your priority is to help your person, your partner, try to endure this relationship, then that's another answer. But if you're trying to put yourself first, and if guilt is part of what is slowing you down, I'd like to relay to you a conversation that I had with a good friend of mine who was an addict of multiple substances and was manic depressive and psychotic and had been institutionalized multiple times and ended up killing himself. But he was an amazing man, and when he was sane and sober, he made sobriety look easy. And we talked about sobriety and addiction and abuse quite a lot. In one of our conversations, we talked about the notion that so often for an addict or an abuser to get better, they first have to lose everything. They have to bottom out. And as long as they continue having friends, they don't bottom out. And so part of the terrible process that happens is that addicts often lose their entire support network before they can try to get better, or abusers do. And that as long as they keep having that support network, they keep being able to tell themselves, I'm not so bad. I haven't hit the rock bottom yet. These people are still around me. So it could be that by distancing yourself from the situation, you're actually playing a needed part to everybody's recovery. Again, that's no guarantee, and I'm not advocating an outcome. I'm just giving you a line to consider if guilt is part of what's going through your head.
And on a much cheerier note, we have some positive feedback and a happy Polly moment. The feedback is from B, who said, I wanted to share with you, both of you, some appreciation I have for the information and perspective you provide through the podcast. About 2 years ago, I left an unhealthy relationship, moved, and joined the kink and poly communities. My first committed DS relationship started very early in my journey, recently ended, but because of my exposure to the wisdom and perspectives from listening to the podcast, I feel like I had the tools, vocabulary, and preparedness to handle it well and ensure that a wonderful friendship remained.
Yay!
Yeah. I'm a member of a huge social networking site for kinky people, and because it is where most of us in my area keep track of events and each other, I found it helpful to write a public announcement of sorts clarifying the recent status change on my profile and owning my first couple years in the community. I wanted to share what I wrote with you because I very much feel like letting you know a personal example of a listener owning their shit might be encouraging, but also because I've had very positive feedback on it, which I want to give you some credit for. By encouraging your listeners to own their shit, we can have the courage to spread the practice of owning your shit in our poly families and relational communities. This is such a huge step for me, as I've often been paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes. Now I see that I don't have to be paralyzed. I really can live and love freely and ethically as long as I continue to own my actions. Victory is ours! Yay! That's awesome. And I love the perspective that you wrote after a breakup, that it is, that it's because of having these tools at your disposal, that makes the things that come with any loving relationship, such as breakups, easier to handle and a positive experience. That's awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, you're experiencing the joy and freedom of owning your poo. Congratulations.
It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by Fubbly Polyamorists everywhere. Now, our Happy Poly Moment this week is quite long, and I was looking for a way to shorten it, and I really didn't want to.
Enjoy.
So bear with me. But I figure, our topic was really difficult, so we have some good, we got some good poly juju afterwards. This is from Kendall, who said, I've always felt polyamorous by nature, but didn't discover this was a relationship option until a few years ago. I feel like I found my true relationship identity, and I'll never go back to traditional monogamy. I met my two boyfriends, Jared and Ryan, around the same time a little over a year ago, and I've since fallen madly in love with both of them. Ryan is married and happily polyamorous. Jared is always identified as monogamous. I've been upfront about my polyamory since day one, but he never seemed to understand my need for other men, and it made him so uncomfortable at the very thought of it that our discussions about my polyamory were extremely tense. It became something that was coming between us and seemed unsolvable. He even said some nasty stuff about Ryan out of jealousy and asked me to choose between the two of them. And this is where we insert the, oh no, he didn't. Warning, danger, Will Robinson. She continues, Because the issue seemed so unsolvable, I avoided bringing up the subject or anything related to the subject and became really private about my relationship with Ryan, tiptoeing around the issue, saying anything that would make him feel better, not mentioning my dates with Ryan, all the unhealthy stuff that leads to explosive arguments. By the way, that's all the stuff you shouldn't do, just so you know. But we have such amazing chemistry that we decided to push through even when the poly-mono split felt impossible. We kept talking in a safe space and negotiating what that safe space meant to us. I never gave up my poly identity to settle for monogamy, and Jared never let me walk all over him. He always stood up for his right to feel uncomfortable with something, and we're working on narrowing down exactly what that is. My super happy poly moment is what has developed because of listening to your podcast and reading More Than Two, which, by the way, you can find at morethan2two.com. I sent Jared a few of your episodes, and he read through More Than Two's website. We even listened to a few of them together, and honestly, it has changed our world. This is like the ego stroking episode, isn't it?
It's nice.
I'm like purring. She writes, we've since been able to slowly open up our dialogue about how this could work for us in a nuanced and personal way. I'm being more honest with him, being more considerate of his feelings, and he is owning his shit and taking responsibility for his feelings. Just like a grown-up.
How about that?
That's awesome. We've gotten so far in deepening our discussions and strengthening our bond based on honesty and consent that last night I went out with Ryan, and for the first time, Jared was aware of our date and the possibility of sex. We had a loving check-in before my date. He distracted himself during the date, and I called him first thing this morning to check in again, and we both felt great afterwards. Thanks for the 3-step process, lusty guy.
Discuss, distract, and do.
Yes.
Well done.
For those who haven't listened, discuss any anxiety before the date, distract yourself during the date, and then do each other after the date.
For whatever do each other means to you.
Reconnect sexually, emotionally, whatever. Yes. In conclusion, she writes, Jared even apologized for placing ultimatums on me, for not being compassionate with Ryan, and expressed being open to eventually going on a double date with my metamor and his wife. Yay! My heart is filled with joy, and I have you all to thank for helping me learn how to be self-aware, analytical, honest, and communicative with others while staying true to myself. Feeling naturally polyamorous isn't always enough. Practicing polyamory responsible is much harder and much more satisfying. Isn't that just like the best happy poly moment ever?
That is fantastic, Kendall, and thank you so much for the strokes. The only thing that I will say is leave a little bit of credit for yourself for doing the hard work.
Yes, absolutely. And for that, taking that responsibility, doing that hard work, deciding not to go the easy way and just not talking about dates and doing a don't ask, don't tell and letting all that stuff lie. Good for you. Good for you. And I don't know what's going on, but at the beginning of this year, you guys have been so freaking generous. We're getting new Poly Weekly Playmates every week. I've really slacked off. I've had crazy things going on at work, and I haven't been doing the Positively Poly Pointers, which is one of the benefits that we give to the Playmates. But I'm starting that up again. Probably can't do it weekly, but I'm shooting for monthly now, because you guys are just awesome. So I would love to welcome our new Playmate, Norman and Tasia, and to our donor, Alyssa, who made a very generous 3-figure donation, if I may say so, to Poly Weekly, along with a very nice letter as to why she was making it. And we love hearing that. We just love that. And I want to thank everyone, even if all you do is listen to Poly Weekly and apply its principles and tell a friend about it. That is absolutely fantastic to us. We love that. We do keep this resource free. It has been and always will be free for helping hundreds of thousands of people navigate their introduction to and continuation of polyamory. And if you ever have questions, comments, or feedback, call 802-505-POLY or email us polyweekly@gmail.com if you would like to consider booking us for one of your events, lustyguy@polyweekly.com. We also have done some Skype events, by the way. So if you can't afford to fly us in, but you want to bring us in to speak to your group through Skype or through a Google Hangout, we're open to that as well. Again, I want to do as much as humanly possible. I do sometimes have to say no, but
That's what I'm for.
But go ahead and ask, and if at all possible, we will find a way to do it.
Let me just throw in here real quick. One of the things that we say all the time is that the function of a relationship is to help make everybody in it be better versions of themselves. And the relationship that Minx has with her listeners, with you, is a perfect example of that. The feedback and the encouragement and the words that you give her light her up.
They totally do.
Thank you all for that. And know that you're helping make Minx a better version of Minx with your support of the show, as well as helping to support the community. Thank you.
You really are. And especially when you write in and say, hey, Minx, you're not being all that inclusive. Or, hey, you should consider using the pronoun they to refer to a singular person. Or, hey, I'm a furry and I don't feel represented. Or, hey, you haven't talked about, older people or younger people. That feedback helps keep me honest and helps improve and expand the compassion that I have for people who aren't like me. And it's very important to me that this podcast be inclusive and nobody feel like they are not represented. That being said, do we still have time for sex?
There's always time for sex.
Okay, we're going to go have sex. So thanks everyone for listening. And remember, it's not all about the sex. And we are very happy to be.
You sure you're up for this?